our first speaker would be A.J. Fardella, I believe.
Hi, good evening, Madam President, members of the board. And for anybody who's interested, the Giants are ahead of the Nationals 2-0 right now. Although we're in a little bit of a trouble, Vogelsong's up to bat, so let's see if he can bunt it. He's got one on first and third. I'm talking to you about this item tonight because I'm having some difficulty with our bidding process. I mean, frankly, it doesn't pass the smell test. I'm looking specifically at the list of people that we approached because I guess for some reason we're not putting these things out for public bid anymore. I'm not sure I agree with the reasoning I've heard for that, since we can always exercise our right to refuse any bid for any reason. But I went through the list. Other than the two people who did submit bids, which by the way are awfully familiar because they seem to be getting most of our work, I just went through. RGW Construction, just looking them up on the internet. They've never done any work in our county, and they haven't had any activity, as far as I can see, in terms of doing any projects or updating their website since 2010. That's the first one. Let's see. Valley Crest, strictly a landscape company. Don't do any other kind of work. I don't know why they would be even considered for a core improvements project. RMT Landscaping, I think that one takes care of itself. Found the same result. Without going through all of the different items that are there, I find that this process is inherently not good for the district, and it's something that needs to stop. I know we started pushing the broom down the hallway, but I think we got a little bit further to push it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fardella. Is that it? Oh, okay, that's it on that one. The item before us here is for the campus core improvements at College Park High School, the lease-leaseback. So I would ask if there is a motion on this agreement.
Madam President, I would move that the board approve the award of lease-leaseback agreement with Robert Botham Incorporated for campus core improvements at College Park High School.
Second. Okay, motion by Mrs. Mayo, second by Mrs. Denler. I don't know if Mr. Cody has anything he wanted to share or add. One of the conversations I had with Mr. Cody was around lease-leasebacks, because for some months I've been talking about them. And I had a lot of information presented to me from both Mr. Peterson and Mr. Cody that has actually been very helpful, because the lease-leasebacks, and I'll just kind of give my perspective before Mr. Cody gives his, which is the lease-leasebacks. I think the problem, I was telling Mr. Cody, I think the problem we encountered in beginning lease-leasebacks was there wasn't really an announcement that the district was going to move into using lease-leasebacks. And I said, I think that was one of the mistakes, because in the state there was some controversy over these lease-leasebacks, and we do have an attorney who is investigating some districts around their use of those. In the process, I've become more educated. I think the mistake we made was not, as a district, coming forward to state, and I'm not blaming any one individual, but just coming forward to say that this is what lease-leasebacks are and this is why we might opt to do it. And my enlightenment with Mr. Cody, I think the other day we were meeting, is around, it's one way of doing business, as Mr. Austin was speaking to. It's one way of doing business. It's not the only way. It's one way. And I saw some justifications for why you might pick lease-leaseback. We can't go back and announce that this is the way we're doing business. We haven't, that opportunity's already gone. But my concern, and I asked this last December, is how many lease-leasebacks will be coming forward, because all of a sudden they started appearing in my world as a board member without that announcement. So we can't go back and do that. But so what I tried to do in the last 6 months or 5 months is to understand what they are, and have gained a lot more insight and knowledge about them as one way to do a bid. And I found they were most useful in checking around when it comes to projects where you might not have so many companies who can come forward and do that bid. So in a way, it's a kind of way to reach out to some companies, but not necessarily in a sleazy, disreputable way, but in a way that encourages you to get some bids. One of the issues that Mr. Cody brought forward that I think is helpful to know is that business is booming more in the construction. I wouldn't say the economy's soaring, but they're back to working. And for some companies, school districts aren't really that appealing because we work on a summer schedule for the most part, and a very tight timeline. We don't enjoy having people banging around our schools during the school year and setting up portable buildings and moving kids around. So it becomes a way to drive people out. They don't want to work in just that summer schedule and be done before the school year starts. So sometimes there is a need to go out and recruit without being sleazy about it, but actually going out to find people who are willing to work within those constraints. They're also useful, I've found, in looking at other districts, when it comes to a project where there may not be lots of companies who can provide that service, and it's a particular kind of service. So I found there are ways to do it that aren't disreputable and sleazy and unethical, which is what some of the concern is about them. There is a reason for it, and my aha, I guess my conversation with Mr. Cody was around, it's one way of doing business. It's not the only way Mount Diablo Unified is going to do business. But I think the problem that we encountered, that I saw from the pushback in the community, was we never came forward and said, lease-leasebacks are one of the ways we're gonna do business, and this is what they're all about. So we've been trying in part to go back and clarify what those are. So Mr. Cody had the courage to take these off the consent agenda and put them out here for action because they're more controversial. So I applaud him for that willingness to do that, because I said, you know, consent is really for things that are routine, and are we considering lease-leaseback routine or not? And eventually maybe we will consider them just one method of getting projects done. But right now, he's gonna come forward and I don't know if you wanna talk about the College Park project or what you might like to do on this.
Madam President, thank you for inviting me up. I did have a couple of quick slides that I just wanted to show you. A lot of times what we're doing doesn't visually translate real well when we're up at the podium and talking to the board. But to answer the question from earlier, before we get started, most of the times what we do when we're selecting or inviting certain peoples is we'll use a combination of either past experience from the people that we have at the district. Additionally, we also get recommendations from the particular architect or engineer that we're working with. Usually we'll combine those two. We don't arbitrarily take anyone off the list for the scope of work that they're doing. Sometimes contractors will joint venture with each other to come up with a project. And one of the things that I wanted to show you that's unique about this project is it is what I would consider mostly a concrete job, but this is what we have right now at College Park. And this is what we're planning on putting in. Now, the areas through the center are mostly concrete, different types of concrete, but there is a large amount of landscaping that's also associated with this particular project. And I didn't make this slide to address that issue, but I thought this was a great visual for you guys to see exactly what we're getting for the money that we're looking at tonight. I think it's going to be a really nice project for College Park.
I know one of the concerns Mr. Fardella had was around the landscaping companies, and this is landscaping.
It's a combination of landscaping, but there's a large amount of concrete flat work in this. We have some concrete benches up on the top. It doesn't show up real well on this slide, but concrete benches for the students to sit on when we're done. And on the bottom, this is mostly the brown areas that you're looking at will be a combination of the concrete benches or another type of bench at this area between those two wings.
Anybody have questions for Mr. Cody about this project or the contractor?
Is this one of the projects that the school chose to do with the money that they had available last year?
Correct. This is out of the High School Enhancement 2 program that we're running.
And this will help address the drainage problem in that particular area?
We had two different projects. We did some drainage late last year. We had another